Welcome to the very first episode of Leadership Explored, the podcast where we dive into what it really means to lead in today's world. I'm Ed Schaefer, and in this first episode, we want to give you a feel for who we are, what this podcast is all about, and why we're even doing it. I'll be joined as always by my co-host Andy Siegmund. We've already recorded some great episodes on everything from return to office debates to feedback culture, but before all that, we want to zoom out and introduce ourselves, share what this show is meant to be, and invite you into the conversation. So Andy, let's kick things off. For folks listening, how would you describe your leadership journey in just a sentence or two?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think for me, it's been something I've been interested in all the way since school, right? So everything from, playing sports or being, involved in music, figuring out how to lead sections or groups or teams, all the way into my career. So, I've spent most of my career leading project teams, everything from, project management to direct people leadership, ranging companies from, $30 million in revenue, all the way up through the Fortune 5. How about you, Ed?
Yeah, and for me, I've been in some kind of leadership role since I was pretty young. I started with Boy Scouts, and was leading boys in the troop, and I earned my Eagle Scout. And over the last 17 years or so, I've worked with teams and leaders across all different levels, from individual contributors to executives, and across areas like product development, project leadership, compliance, and legal, and just all sorts of stuff. And I guess what's been consistent in all of it is this focus on helping teams figure out what works for them, not just applying a playbook, but adapting tools and frameworks to fit the team, the people, and the context that they're in.
Awesome, Ed. So I'm trying to remember the timeline now, but it was quite a handful of months ago. You and I were talking about some related things, and you pitched the idea of doing a podcast. So what sparked that? What made you want to do this, and how did I get lucky enough to get the invite?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess underneath all of it, I really just wanted to see what it would be like. It was kind of an experiment and something to try. You and I were already having a lot of conversations about leadership, and I thought, well, what if we record them and share them? Maybe it would be valuable for someone else. Maybe it would help us think more clearly about our leadership approaches and the things we're doing. And it really is an experiment. It's just a chance to build something, maybe grow some visibility, and have some space to explore the stuff that we seem to be always thinking and talking about anyway. And I asked you because I thought you'd say yes, frankly. You're usually pretty open to trying things. You're usually good about showing up. And I knew you'd bring thoughtful ideas and a steady voice to the conversations. And you wouldn't mind if I disagreed with you. And I wouldn't mind if you disagreed with me. I figured we could learn from each other in that way. And since we've talked about leadership so many times before, and I found those chats helpful, I just thought it would be a good fit. So I guess I have to ask you, what made you say yes? Why would you want to co-host this with me?
Um, is it sounded fun? A good enough answer? That was the primary thing. I think when this idea kind of came into the light, we were already having conversations along these lines with a fair amount of regularity. And to me, this seemed like a great way for us to continue to have those conversations, right? It almost gave, from my point of view, us an excuse to hang out and talk about things that we care about. And I also thought that it would be really interesting to share these publicly. I think a lot about leadership in our current context, from what we're seeing in the business landscape to what we're seeing in the political landscape. And I thought that there was a gap that we might be able to fill by having some really thoughtful conversations about the nuance and the gray zones that exist within that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess let's talk about what we actually hope this show does for the people listening. So when you think about a listener hitting play on an episode, what do you hope they walk away with?
Yeah. So for me, you know the purpose of this is not to go out and provide answers, right? The life is not a binary. There's not a correct answer to any of these various topics. And I really wanted to highlight the nuance, of these things, and really show how folks out there doing this sort of work on a day-to-day basis think about these sorts of topics, right? Kind of almost entertaining the philosophical aspect of it, right? These aren't things that you can go look up in, your business school textbook and say, well, the correct answer is X, so we will go and apply X. So for me, I think the purpose and what I want folks to walk away with is, maybe some tools and techniques, but maybe also just some thoughts on, how do you think about it? Really, jog folks, individual thoughts and figure out where you fall on the spectrum of these various ideas and topics, and hopefully then bring that back to your workplace or your life in a more thoughtful and nuanced way. How about you, Ed?
Yeah, I guess for me, I don't disagree with any of the things you said, but I think for me, I hope it's a combination of reflection and action and support. So I want someone to walk away thinking about something in a new way, maybe trying something different, maybe changing how they give feedback or how they run a meeting or show up for their team, and actually try that thing. And then also the support piece is sometimes these conversations aren't happening. So knowing that there are other leaders who might be experiencing the same thing or hearing our perspective can help people feel not so alone, or that are other people out there who understand, and hopefully it can make some space for people. And with all of that, leadership can feel overwhelming sometimes. So even just one insight or one experiment or one moment of feeling like, oh, other people had this problem too and they worked through it, that feels like a win to me. Um, and right now we don't have a rigid structure for the show, and that's kind of intentional. Sometimes we're unpacking stuff we've seen in the field. Sometimes we're thinking out loud about something new. But I know we're trying to keep it real and grounded, whatever we talk about. So, how would you describe the tone or feel of what we're building here?
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think our lack of a concrete format is definitely a feature, not a bug. When I think about the tone and the format and the voice that we're trying to put out here, I'm reminded of the incorrectly attributed quote to Walt Whitman, right? The "Be curious, not judgmental" from Ted Lasso. And I think that's really what we're trying to do, right? Is we're trying to look at things that we're curious about and try to have thoughtful and nuanced conversation with those topics, and really integrate a combination of our own anecdotal experiences and observations with some concrete data and a little bit of actual research that we've done on these various topics to really look into the nuance and try to understand things as thoroughly as we can.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. We're not trying to position ourselves as experts who've got it all figured out and know how to do all of these things perfectly all of the time. We're just trying to have honest conversations and pull from whatever we think is useful, whether that's frameworks, tools, lived experience, tacit knowledge and experience, or questions we're still working through, or challenges we're facing. And I hope that this ultimately is relatable and reflective for people. And I hope sometimes it challenges folks a little bit too and encourages them to grow in different ways. So now that we've talked about the tone and format, who is this really for? Like, who do you think we're targeting, and who's our main audience?
Yeah, I think I had mentioned this to you at some point when either we had just started this or after we recorded the first couple of episodes, that I like to think that I'm talking to a younger version of myself, right? Things that I maybe wish I knew or thought about at some, earlier point along, my career path. And I think that that's sort of our core audience, right? And I think it goes a little bit both ways. So I think we kind of cover everything from incumbent leaders to folks who are aspiring to larger responsibilities within their organizations, as well as people maybe further along the path than we are, trying to understand what does it look and feel like, a couple of rungs down that ladder as well. So I think it's pretty wide reaching. But in the back of my mind is always folks who are aspiring to maybe their first formal leadership role or their first informal leadership role. Ed,
Yeah.
curious your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I would say whether for anyone listening out there, whether you're a manager, a director, or an executive, or even someone who's just thinking more intentionally about how you lead, since leadership happens at all levels, it's not just those official leadership positions. I would say our podcast is for you. I think a lot of our content is we kind of talk about things with experienced leaders in mind, but I do think there's value here for anyone trying to grow in how they lead and support others, whether that's because they're new to leadership roles or maybe I know a lot of people get thrown into leadership roles and don't necessarily get the support or the training or the background that they need. So they're experienced in some ways, but they may not have all the tools or frameworks that are helpful. So yeah, I guess I think about anybody who's really trying to be a more intentional leader and have some self awareness and grow in how they lead. And there's a lot of leadership podcasts out there. So, what do you think makes ours different than the other ones that already exist?
Yeah, I think it's that we're trying to play in the gray zones, right? I think that's the primary piece, right? Is we're coming at this without an agenda, right? We're not trying to push any global philosophy on leadership. We're trying to think more about it, right? And think more about what happens in leadership, what are the nuances, and how should we think about it? Ed, I'm curious about yours.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't listen to a lot of leadership podcasts anymore. I used to, but a lot of them I felt like they became interviews or promotional. And that's fine and can be useful sometimes, but I really wanted something different. So for me, at least right now, this is more of a working session. I think these are conversations that a lot of leaders wish they were having with their peers or their boss or someone they trust. We're not coming in with all the answers. We're just trying to figure things out and just doing it in public instead of in private. And hopefully that gives other people space to reflect and grow too. And who knows, maybe one day we might do some interviews and things like that. If so, I imagine it'll be leaders that we like and respect and learning more about their leadership philosophy than trying to sell any particular message or approach or anything. Um, so, yeah, I totally agree. We're not trying to sell any one size fits all answer to leadership. We're exploring it, hence the name of the podcast, and
Mhm.
trying to do it with honesty and curiosity and figuring things out and learning and growing along the way ourselves. I know one of the things we really wanted to do on this podcast is share moments and experiences that have shaped how we lead. So let's share with our audience just one story or example that kind of helps capture our leadership philosophy and approach to leadership. What do you have?
Yeah. So, you know, I just sit on this one for a little bit to think about it. Um, so you know this about me. I'm not sure our audience knows this about me. But before I started the career I have now, I was a professional musician. I went to music school for quite a long time. And I remember while I was in school, I was playing in a small group of about a dozen folks, and it was being conducted by a student conductor. And the conducting professor was, overseeing one of our rehearsals, and the student conductor was referencing piece, a part of the music. And while singing back what he wanted to hear, he made a mistake in the rhythm. And the conducting teacher pulled him aside and he said, "Hey, look, when you're going to do that, like that's a very well trodden path for conductors to say, oh, I want it to go like this and sing it to you." He said, "You cannot make a mistake. If you're going to do that, you can never make a mistake while you're doing that." And what he was really pointing out was not just the specificity and the level of preparation that you need to have to do those sorts of things, but also that as a leader, it's your job to set the tone for the group, right? And that's one of the things that I think about a lot, whether you're leading projects or leading teams, is that what happens downstream of you is a direct reflection of the tone that you set, right? If you are prepared, your team will recognize that they also must be prepared. If you are on time, they recognize that they must also be on time, right? So the standards that you uphold for yourself become the standards that go downstream. And when you are not holding yourself to those standards, what you're going to do is lower the bar for everyone else that you're working with. And that's one of those things that I like to think about a lot, right? Is never being the kind of leader who says that, do, do as I say, not as I do. I think you're going to get way more impact by exemplifying what you want to see than you are by talking about what you want to see.
Yeah, I really
So,
love that. That's great. It took me a little bit to think of how I wanted to approach this too, because I could think of lots of stories or anecdotes, but I was trying to think of one that encapsulated my leadership philosophy sort of holistically. And I came up with one, and this is something that stuck with me for a long time. I'm pretty sure I've told you this story before. Uh, I was interviewing a candidate once, and I asked one of my favorite interview questions, which is, "What do you bring to a team that no one else does?" Since it's a big focus on teamwork and how they can contribute to everybody else. And they said, "I'm a 10x developer. I write 10 times more code, 10 times faster than anyone else on the team." And that's almost a verbatim quote. And I remember thinking, okay, but are you also producing 10 times the bugs, 10 times the technical debt? Are you doing anything to add to the team or help the other people on the team? He didn't mention anything about growing others or contributing to the team beyond his own work. And that moment for me really enforced something about leadership, which is leadership isn't about being the most productive individual. I think it's about creating conditions where the team does better because you're there. So I guess that idea of leadership is about taking 1 plus 1 and making it equal 3 instead of 2. I think that's really where leaders can shine and help get the best out of everybody that they're leading, and make a team that delivers meaningful work in a way that's successful and sustainable. So these are the kinds of stories that we'll try to share throughout the episodes as we talk about different topics and things that come up. We have already recorded a few episodes, so I'm curious, Andy, which one are you most excited for people to hear? Or if there's a topic we haven't recorded yet, but it's on our list, is there anything you're excited to share with people?
I'm really excited about the comparison piece, right? We've recorded an episode about comparing ourselves to the best. And I just think it's a really interesting dive into the nuances and why we do things that we do, and how valuable context is, both within our personal and our professional lives. Ed, I'm curious about yours.
Yeah, as far as ones we've already recorded, I before we recorded it, I was really looking forward to the episode we did on leadership ethics. I think it's a topic that doesn't get talked enough about, and there's a lot there that we should be exploring. So I'm excited for people to hear that one. And then I know one of our future topics we haven't recorded yet is that we're planning around certainty and how some leaders demand it when they really need to think in terms of confidence or probabilities and bets. So I'm really excited to have that conversation with you and then share it with folks and see if it's something they can get some value out of. So we've got
Awesome.
episodes coming on return to office debates, ethics and leadership, hiring for character, remote first communication, giving and receiving feedback, and many more to come. Before we close out, anything else you wanted to share or add with the audience?
No, I think we've covered it. I'm real excited about diving in and going live. Right, we've been talking about shipping this for quite a bit now, and we're at that junction point. So I think this is going to be a whole bunch of fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope the folks that listen out there get some value and maybe encourage some conversations or have folks reach out to us with questions or topics they'd like to see us explore. It'd be really great to make sure we're adding value to all the different leaders out there and helping them grow. I think that's going to be it for our intro episode today. So thanks a lot for joining us on this first episode of Leadership Explored. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe, rate us wherever you're listening, and share this episode with someone you think would appreciate it. We're releasing 2 episodes today on our initial release date. The second episode is about RTO. And after that, we'll be releasing new episodes every other Tuesday. So tune in and let's keep exploring what better leadership can really look like. And until then, keep leading with purpose. Thank you.